What's up, everybody? KleverKrok back once again for week 4 of the GTA Season 3. So, it's been a little while since I uploaded this, and obviously this is late. Probably be going up about the same time as week 5. And that's because I was on my honeymoon, late honeymoon specifically. Anyways, it's good to be back. It was a good break as well, in case you were wondering. And this week, we have some really interesting matches. So, we're just going to kind of go through. It'll be just me this week. And then for the week 5 recap, I'm going to have 2 guests, like usual, with us. So, without further ado, I'm just going to go through each match and kind of talk about each as they play through. And we will just do that. So, I will just start with the match between Fakemon United and non-essential NPCs. Alright, let's get this started. So, right away I'm saying Volcanion just demolishes this team. Really, the only answer that they have is Rotom, which is an okay answer, I'll give it that, but like the rest of his team just gets demoed by Volcanion. And then Chandelure obviously puts in a decent amount of work too, except for the T-Tar and the Rotom. And then you've got Aggron, who does decently well. You know, it kind of just goes down from there. And the NPCs brought the... If I'm not mistaken, I think they brought the same team each week. Like, exactly the same. Or maybe just changed up a few moves. Or something like that. And that's peculiar to me, I guess. I know there's probably a few things that they changed, which we'll talk about here in a minute when we see it happen. But let's see. Yeah, it looks like they haven't really switched up their lineup at all. They've kept the same 6 players. Excuse me. Each week, and so I just think it's really interesting that he has 3 steel types that get wrecked by Volcanion. You can't really do much to Volcanion for that matter. I mean, Lucario can still hit hard with adaptability, close combat, and all that stuff, and I don't know. I just feel like he needs to probably take some more time to really consider what he's bringing to the table, because he's got, what, 11 players, and I just think that he could probably pull off some more interesting stuff if he doesn't bring the same 6. And eventually he's going to lose, well, I mean, he's going to lose more matches if he just brings the same 6 each week. So he needs to switch it up. On the Fakemon side, Volcanion was a good bring. Chandelure, like I said. Mega Aggron's decent. Blissey's kind of a must. It's a decent, and then you kind of just filler from there. I mean, Hydreigon's an okay choice, but with the Gardevoir, And then Hoopa's kind of an choice too. He doesn't have a way to get rid of rocks or any hazards for that matter. And with the Fortress, I expect that, which you will see, I will expect to be a problem. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So, Volcanion lead against the obvious Fortress lead. That was smart. He went for Heat Wave. I guess he went for Heat Wave for damage, and Fire Blast had too low of accuracy for his taste, so that's fine. That's fine. I'm guessing it's a choice specs variant anyways. So that was a decent first turn play, but obviously he's going to get some sort of hazards up. He goes for Toxic Spikes, which is interesting to me, because he didn't go for Stealth Rocks, but I guess it was the better play, because Stealth Rocks doesn't do a ton to his team. Well, it does a decent amount. But either way, he gets up a layer of Toxic Spikes. Now, the Volcanion switch out, I'm thinking, I looked at it first and I'm like, why did he switch out? He had an easy kill here, but maybe he thought that the Fortress was going to run a Custap Berry Explosion variant. And so he didn't want to lose his win condition, and switched out into his Hoopa, who could be immune to it, obviously. And that's not what he went for. He went for hazards. So the prediction, even though it was, I think, a decent prediction, ended up costing him. He was able to still take out the Fortress, but now he has rocks and Toxic Spikes up. I can't speak. And he has no way to get rid of them. So now Floating Mom, the Gardevoir, comes out and just kind of throws off, I think, a safe Moonblast, because why not? I mean, doesn't hurt at this point to do that. So does that, and the Blissey is poisoned, and he's really just going to kind of wear it out. Now this was interesting. So obviously the smart play for anyone to go for, at least for a switch-in, would be the Blissey, because it walls the crap out of Gardevoir typically. Except for, I was thinking, okay, well, Psyshock, if it's running Psyshock, it's going to get destroyed, because it's not Chansey. It doesn't have a decent defense stat. It has a terrible defense stat. So I think that even though the Zen Headbutt worked, and obviously I calced this, he had to have invested some in his attack in order for it to do as much as it did. Psyshock would have done plenty without having to split invest mixed, you know, into special attack and attack. But hey, it worked, so that's fine. And then, so the Blissey's down already, and that's kind of an unfortunate circumstance. He switches into Aggron, obviously. Now this was also a cool choice. I actually didn't know that Gardevoir got Destiny Bond. So he was expecting the Heavy Slam or Gyro Ball or, you know, whatever to just floor the Gardevoir. So he was going to trade 2 for 1. But luckily for the Fakemon and Isaac, he went for something different. And I'm not sure why he went for Fire Punch. Maybe expecting to switch out into either Lucario or Metagross. And so that was a prediction as well. But since they both kind of made chancy predictions, no pun intended. I don't even know how that's a pun. But they made these predictions. It ended up actually, you know, the Destiny Bond didn't work out for him. And obviously at this point, he's going to switch out, fearing to lose his Mega, and the Gardevoir goes for Zen Headbutt for whatever reason, I guess expecting to switch out. So I'm just going to go on the assumption that that was a prediction. Therefore, that was a good decision on the NPC's part, being able to at least get some damage off. I figure if he was going to make the prediction, though, Moonblast might have been a better choice, considering that Hydreigon's there. So, anyways, he goes for Zen Headbutt. It does a bit of damage. The Hoopa's pretty much gone. It's not going to outspeed the Gardevoir. So it gets another kill, taking out Hoopa. And then he goes into Chandelure. And I'm not sure what kind of set this Chandelure is. But the Gardevoir outspeeds it. I don't know if that was a speed tie or what. He wasn't Choice Scarf like he probably should have been. And so it was a trade via the Destiny Bond. So now that Gardevoir went 3 for 1, which, man, that is impressive. I definitely think that was a good choice on what to bring on the Gardevoir, considering the threats that the Fakemon had. And now he switches into his Metagross, and Isaac switches into his Volcanion. He's just going to throw off a Heat Wave. Why not? It's Specs. It'll still do a decent amount of damage. I guess he didn't want to switch into anything, but he probably could have just switched into Rotom. He lets the Metagross just go down for whatever reason. So, after that, now he goes into that, and so we find out that he's not choiced, and he goes for the Focus Blast and lands it and gets some big damage off on the Rotom. But in return, the Volt Switch puts it in range of being knocked out by Sand plus... Well, it would have just been knocked out by Poison alone. But, so that thing's gone, and that was really unfortunate because Volcanion was needed in every circumstance to take out the Tyranitar, or at least weaken it, and then also take out the Lucario. So he really needed to keep that thing healthy. So he should have probably switched out to the Mega Aggron and risk the burn or something, you know. I just don't know if staying in was his best decision. So now he kind of just, I guess he brought Sunny Day knowing that Tyranitar was going to bring the Sandstorm. Unless he was packing Flamethrower, but we only ever see Sunny Day and Roost, I think, on him. Yeah, so obviously the Tyranitar's got Dragon Claw. It's just going to keep whittling him down. It's just kind of a back and forth here. Getting Roost up, and then Dragon Claw, and then Roost, and you got a crit at some point, but really it didn't do... The Hydreigon wasn't able to pull anything off, and at this point it wasn't very useful either, I'd say. I mean, it's still able to do a decent bit of damage to each of them, but with only having Draco Meteor and maybe Flamethrower for moves, along with the Sunny Day and the Roost, I'm not sure that it was all that useful for maybe why he brought it. So he was able to get it damaged pretty well here, but now he's down to his Aggron, and so he obviously takes out the Tyranitar here, but not before taking a Fire Blast from the Tyranitar, which was a good move, and on the NPC's part. And so the Tyranitar goes down. The Volt Switch brings down the Aggron to really low, and expecting to maybe live it and risk just the chance. Obviously, he was kind of just at, he was cornered. He didn't have no choice. He went for a rest. So we find out he is a Rest Talk set, actually, which I think worked really well, except for the fact that he just didn't have enough going for him at this point to finish the fight. I mean, he really didn't have much for the Rotom. He could have probably taken out the Lucario. I'm wondering, now I'm confused about this. A couple things. Alright, so usually when you do Rest Talk, maybe this is just me, but I always do Rest, Sleep Talk, and then expect to wake up on that third turn, because usually you do, and then you go for a regular move. If you go for Sleep Talk, it's obviously, and you wake up, that does nothing. If you wake up, or if you don't wake up and you use a move, you don't do anything, but you have a better chance of waking up on the third turn than you do of not waking up, so you should just go for a regular move, and I wonder if that may have made a difference, at least, with taking out the Lucario and making it a 1-0. But I also was wondering about the Blaze Kick versus Close Combat choice from the Lucario. Now, it might have been because he didn't want the stat drops on the defenses, and so he was just whittling it down since he knew the Sleep Talk Rest was a slower paced moveset. So maybe that's why he did it, until he knew he could take it out with one Close Combat, which we'll see here in a second. So that could have been what he was thinking. If he wasn't thinking that, I definitely would have just gone for the Close Combats. But really close game, some really interesting stuff from the NPCs that ended up paying off. And ultimately, just on the Fakemon side, I think they had the threats that they needed to. They didn't bring, except for the fact that they didn't bring a hazard removal player, and Volcanion went down way too early, I think. So, other than that, it was just some good moves and some good plays by the NPCs. So, anyway, that was a 2-0, where the NPCs won against the Fakemon. So next, we will go on to the next match, which is a pretty big one between the two undefeated teams of the time, and that was Wiltshire Wobbuffets versus the Richmond Rykos. Now, the Rykos just have such a threatening lineup. They have such a strong defensive and offensive core, and it's just really kind of hard to figure out how to break that. And there's some good stuff on the Wiltshire Wobbuffet side, and they know how to use their players really well. We've already seen that. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what happens here and how it all transpires, but I think it has more to do with decisions. I don't really see too much looking at their teams what they could have done differently. So the Rykos lead with Thundurus, and the Wobbuffets lead with Ambipom, obviously for the fake out damage. He switches into Coffin, of course, and you know that's just kind of a free switch in there. He goes for knockoff and gets rid of the, what was it? No, it doesn't tell us yet. Rocky Helmet. So I got rid of the Rocky Helmet, but it got Mummy, which means no more Technician, which hasn't mattered at this point. And now he got some Toxic Spikes up, which are helpful, but it's only one layer, so it's like okay. And so the Raikou is obviously, or the Raikou that switches in, was able to get rid of the Assault Vest on the Raikou, but the Raikou obviously took out the Ambipom. Now, usually Raikou brings Shadow Ball. And so I'm not sure about the Trevenant switch in unless he knew that Raikou was not going to have Shadow Ball. I really thought that maybe that was a risky switch in because HP Ice is also a thing. And so he just goes for Leech Seed, which was the safe switch or safe assumption on whether he stayed in or not, to kind of get some setup. Now I think here he just goes for a Will-O-Wisp. That's interesting. Maybe to get a burn just for residual damage, I'm not sure. The Cofagrigus gets some health back, not really doing too much back with the the Leech Seed on him. So he's kind of just stalling the opponent at this point. He went for a Will-O-Wisp again. Now this is where it gets rough because the Blaziken has the advantage. It's going to get the speed boost buff. It's Life Orb. It's going to just drop the Trevenant right there. Now he's in a bit of trouble. So he's got the Klefki, but this Klefki, other than maybe T-Wave, which is what he had to go for, I feel like, at this point, was, you know, obviously null and void when he switched in the Thundurus. So he switches back out into the Conch, maybe to take his own Thunder Wave, but it doesn't matter because of the poison. I wonder if it's Guts, and either way, I think it's better to have poison than it is to have paralysis. So he goes for Stone Edge here and punishes the Raikous for being greedy with the Thundurus. And then he goes for the Mach Punch here to finish it off. And so he was able to pick up that first knockout on the Thundurus. So at this point, obviously, Blaziken comes out. Flare Blitz is going to do plenty. I'm not sure if that Flare Blitz mattered because it was Life Orb. It may have mattered, barely. I'm not really sure. But obviously, the Blaziken stays in. It was carrying Earthquake, so it got some really good damage on the Mega Charizard, which was a good assumption on the Raikou's part to go for Earthquake, expecting it to Mega Evolve. What the Wobbuffets might have wanted to do, which Blaziken usually isn't known for carrying Earthquake, so I guess it was not something to expect, but maybe to have stayed as regular regular Charizard to get that resistance kept or whatever against anything that had like high jump kick. But anyways, it picks up the kill with Earthquake on the Blaziken. I think that at this point the extrasensory actually didn't take him out, and this would have been a good chance for him to set up, because at this point none of his team had a priority, and so outspeeding him would have done plenty to get a D-Dance up, but he goes for just healing, and I'm pretty sure that he goes for a Will-O-Wisp here, which is a bit strange, and then he gets the Toxic off onto the Charizard. The Charizard switches out, obviously, and the Milotic comes in and gets that poison, so the Marvel Scale triggers. And I think that what happens here, he goes back out into Coffin. Coffin gets poisoned, and the Wish triggers to heal the Cofagrigus. And let's see, so the Milotic uses Light Screen, Dark Pulse, does nothing. At this point, it's just kind of a stall game to whittle down the Milotic, and the Heal Bell forces it to switch out there. And so next he just kind of switches in the Raikou. He can't do anything about it, so that Wish heals up the Raikou. And so at this point the Umbreon's just kind of deflecting anything that the Wobbuffets can do, and it's just kind of keeping his team completely healthy. The Raikou is going to outspeed and probably go for a Volt Switch here. Nope, goes for Extra Sensory. And takes a lot of damage. Again, that would have been a good point. Maybe he wasn't expecting it to stay in. That would have been a good point. Either way, I think, to have gone for, what was it? Dragon Dance, if he was running it. He may have not been running it, but it would have been a really good time for Dragon Dance, because then he would have one-shot the Raikou on the next turn, maybe picked up a second kill, or at least crippled one of his other Pokemon. So 2 chances where if he had Dragon Dance, it would have been very useful to use. So at this point, he's just kind of trying to stall and wear out the Charizard, just like the other ones. And so he goes back out to the Klefki. Obviously switches in, heals the Raikou, back and forth, back and forth. The Klefki gets taken out by a Thunderbolt. Then the Charizard just gets whittled down again. The Umbreon walls it. So he had Flare Blitz, Earthquake, Roost, and maybe Dragon Dance. Maybe it was Dragon Claw. I'm not sure. But basically, the Umbreon completely walls down the rest of his team. He actually told me that the Slowbro had no attacking moves on it, so he just kind of used it for a turn of stall. But it ended up working out, and really, there was just nothing he could do at this point to take out the Umbreon. Losing Conkeldurr as early as he did, and not using Dragon Dance on the Charizard kind of prevented him from being able to break the Umbreon. So that kind of, that's basically what happens here. I mean, it just keeps going until the Raikou comes out and breaks it. 53 turns in, it's a 4-0 for the Raikous. So, like I said, it was a really good match. It was a back and forth. I think the Wobbuffets really needed to preserve that Conk to take out at least the Umbreon. So losing it to the Blaziken was kind of a rough choice, and he didn't have a lot of options, but he really needed that for it. And then if he had Dragon Dance on the Charizard, he had 2 opportunities where he could have, and if he didn't, well, then he had no choice there. But it was a really good match. I think it was a really good back and forth. There were a couple times where you thought it might go in the Wobbuffets, way or whatever, and it just ended up turning out that the Umbreon was able to kind of stop everything. So, good match again on both sides. So next we will go ahead and look at the match between Justified 18 of the Zubatmen and Mast 47, coach of the Gengars, the Maple Grove Gengars. Now, I think this is another case of used the same 6 Pokemon over and over. So yeah, this is one of the 3 teams that's only used, the same 6 Pokemon each week. And it's not a bad setup, but it's not exactly the most defensive, if that makes sense. There's not a lot of core advantages that they have, and since you bring the same 6 each week, it's easier to prepare and kind of counter what you have coming at you. So I would really encourage the Gengars to branch out and use some of the other Pokemon they have, and not just stick to the same 6 Pokemon each week. So without further ado, I guess we'll go ahead and start it. I don't see anything too wrong with what the Zubatman brought. Fairly standard with what he's got going up against him. So, yeah. Leading with the Hippowdon, that's standard. And the Torterra. I'm guessing the Torterra gets up rocks here. Fearing the Woodhammer switches out. Maybe the Giga Drain or Leech Seed. He Mega Evolves the Venusaur here. And obviously the Torterra is at a huge disadvantage. Even with an Earthquake, it just doesn't do anything. So So really it's just kind of a Giga Drain war here. He's trying to do some damage. He's got Synthesis, but under Sandstorm it heals half. So it's not really in his favor. He switches out here. I think he goes for Giga Drain, so he gets a decent amount of damage on the Electros. Now, this next move, Flamethrower. This is, I think, something that they didn't know, or they were just hoping would do enough damage. But Mega Venusaur gets Thick Fat, and Thick Fat halves the damage dealt by Fire and Ice moves, which means that even though technically Flamethrower would be super effective, it does half the damage, doing actually a bit less than what it would do as a neutral attack. So, excuse me. So, the problem there is he probably should have bought something like Acrobatics or something, but he's just getting whittled down here. The Flamethrower didn't do anything, so he realizes that and switches out here, which was his best move, I think. Goes into the Drapion, goes for the Taunt to stop the Leech Seed, which was smart. Now, the Venusaur switches out, and in comes the Hippowdon, which can handle pretty much everything that the Drapion could handle, or do. But Drapion goes for Whirlwind and sends that thing flying, brings in the Manaphy, and so decent plays so far. Surf doesn't do all that much to him, but he goes for Taunt, I guess fearing the Tail Glow. At this point, he's kind of in trouble because he's 2 shots away from getting knocked out. And he goes for Knockoff, I guess to get rid of the Focus Sash, and he realizes, oh crap, that doesn't matter anymore. So, I think no, he doesn't let it go down. Okay. He goes out into for Alligator. For Alligator, walls it okay. It doesn't have the best special defense. And he's probably thinking that he can finish it off here, but he doesn't outspeed it naturally, and Energy Ball is going to just take it out. I don't know if the crit mattered or not. It may have not, but I don't think that for Alligator would have taken out the Manaphy there. And the Torterra comes in and takes out, at a great cost, takes out the Manaphy. Tyrantrum comes in here, and he goes for a Fire Fang, so I guess he's probably Strong Jaw. Takes out the Torterra. In comes the Gliscor. And the Gliscor just goes for a knockoff. I guess that's a fair choice just to get rid of whatever's there. The Choice Specs. That's a good thing that he got off there, off the Clefable. So that was a good move on his part. Now he goes for Taunt here. Now, because it's Choice Specs, he probably should have just assumed that he couldn't, and he didn't have to worry about, any sort of crazy things other than like offensive attacks. So he shouldn't have gone for Taunt there. Moonblast, obviously. Well, here's the other thing. Usually Clefable, especially offensive Clefable, is going to be Magic Guard with Specs or Life Orb. And that's what he's shown to have brought every time he's brought Clefable. So, going for Toxic isn't going to do anything, so he takes another Moonblast, and now he's within, he's really close to being knocked out. It's probably 2 turns away. He goes for Roost, I guess, just to get some health back, and he's still kind of on the defensive. The taunt ended, it still doesn't matter. He switches out here, though. Switches into the Drapion, and he switches out from Clefable into Venusaur. So it's not a terrible position for the Drapion. Drapion goes for the taunt to make sure Leech Seed doesn't come up. But the Sludge Bomb predicting the taunt was probably a good move. Knockoff isn't going to do anything because it is neutral stab, but there's no item, so it doesn't do very much. Sludge Bomb's just going to whittle this thing down. He goes for a set of Toxic Spikes, which doesn't... Now, Toxic Spikes would have been good to start with, but Jirachi is immune to Toxic. The Clefable is already poisoned and has Magic Guard, and then the Venusaur, when it comes in, it absorbs It absorbs Toxic Spikes. So, and it's also poison type, so it won't get affected by it. So really, it's just for Tyrantrum and Hippowdon, and I guess that's all he really thought he had that he could do, so I guess it's just, doing what you can. I guess he goes for another flamethrower here just to try and get some damage off. But like before, it doesn't even do all that much. He does get a burn, which is helpful. He goes for, or no, he just gets taken out by a Giga Drain. And the burn kind of puts it back where it was before in health. Now, the Gliscor comes back in, and I'm pretty sure this thing has nothing it can do against the Venusaur. The Venusaur sets up Leech Seed while the Gliscor roosts. He does go for Taunt, but it's too late because he already set up his Leech Seed. So now he's just going to sit there and just suck it dry of, via Giga Drain and Leech Seed. He's going to go for knockoff, but it does no damage. It's just going to literally just stall it out, and the Venusaur is just going to wear it down, is what it seems like is going to happen. He just goes for Roost. He can't really do anything here. I think he's bringing... Now, like I said before, I've noticed that even though some teams bring the same 6 every week, that they are bringing, in some cases, bringing different moves. But in this case, I think that they're bringing the same move sets too. I could be wrong, and it may be just certain Pokemon, but you shouldn't just bring the same set every week, especially if you need answers to Venusaur, because on this team I see no answers for Venusaur. There's no acrobatics or anything on the Gliscor. There's no acrobatics or anything on the Electros, and those are out of the 6 that he brought. Those are the only 2 I see that could do anything to this Venusaur. So he's really got no answers for this. He switches into Golurk, and the Giga Drain's just going to wear it the heck down. And so the Golurk's just in here weak already. He does go for Nice Punch, but like I said, Thick Fat's going to make it do nothing, and the Golurk goes down. So now it's just back out to the Gliscor. And the same thing before, it just kind of wears it down. Giga Drain, Leech Seed, all that. So basically Venusaur destroyed their team. Didn't really have an answer for it, and that's kind of why it ended the way it did, I think. So I would just encourage the Gengars to try and prepare a little bit more for future matches, and see what else they can bring, and make sure that they have answers for, like, especially their megas, the things that they'll probably bring against your team. Like, make sure you have some sort of answer for that, and make sure that it's a good one if you can. And you can't always have a good answer for that, but it's something to keep in mind. So we will go ahead and move on to the next match, which is the Black Ice versus the Charmeleonaires. Black Ice is coached by Spiral Palm and brought Durant, Dugtrio, Whimsicott, Ferrothorn, Mega Kangaskhan, and Sigilif. And the Charmeleonaires brought Mega Pinsir, Greninja, Machamp, Granbull, Quagsire, and Mew. And yeah, so this is, I think, this was the 3rd team that has brought like the same Pokemon each week. Let's see, yes. And it may be slightly different movesets, if any variation. There may not be, but because it was the same, I'm guessing it was easier to prepare for this match for Dan. So I would just encourage the Black Ice to try and not bring the same stuff each week. But anyways, it's just kind of self-explanatory. We'll go ahead and go watch it. Let's put it on normal. We'll do that. Alright, so Durant comes in. It's going to do the entrainment. Probably. Yeah, it does. The Granbull goes for an Earthquake to get decent damage off. Now, he switches out here knowing that the Dugtrio is going to come in, because we've seen it happen already. Goes into the Mew. Dugtrio is forced to switch out. So the Durant comes back in. Mew goes for Taunt, which is good because the entrainment can't do anything. Stone Edge won't do very much. Mew sets up a substitute. The Durant can't really do all that much about it. He switches out into the Sigilif, And now Mew sets up a nasty pot. And so he's got this momentum, and really Sigilif can't do all that much to him. Mew goes for a baton pass to safely switch in a nasty plot and substitute to Greninja, and there is no damage dealt. So now it's behind a sub, and it's just going to demolish everything on his team now. So the Greninja is just going to take out the Sigilif here, still behind a sub. And at +2, and then he's just going to go for an Ice Beam here, or Hidden Power Fire. And I guess he's just kind of stalling him out here, trying to wear him down. He switches out here, goes for the Ice Beam. Oh, barely lives it. The Ferrothorn's just going to get taken out here, I'm guessing. Oh, he goes for Protect, just to, I guess, scout. Goes for Ice Beam. Greninja goes ahead and hits it with a Hidden Power Fire. Takes out the Ferrothorn. Mega Kangaskhan comes in. Now, this is where I don't know if it was a damage thing or what, but he should have probably gone for the Fake Out here. I haven't seen him use it. Maybe he's not even brought it. But Mega Kangaskhan should always, 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 always have Fake Out. It's free damage pretty much. And Stab on Kangaskhan, it just does so much. So always bring Fake Out on Mega Kangaskhan. It's just free damage, and it would have broke the sub here without having to take any damage from this thing. And it probably would have been enough to take out this Greninja, if not scare it out. So the Greninja does get taken out here, but no, it doesn't. Okay, he switches out here, and he just is spamming Sucker Punch at this point. Now the Dynamic Punch is going to take out the Kangaskhan, and yeah, so that was kind of a difficult choice there. So we're kind of back out to the same thing. He's going to go for, I think, his own sub, probably. Then he goes for Taunt. Okay, so that was a good choice. He switches out into Greninja, I guess, sacking it off. Struggle takes it out. That's hilarious. And so that means there's no attacking moves on the Whimsicott. So he can just set up here with the Mega Pinsir, knowing that the Whimsicott will take itself out here. Mega Pinsir set up with the +2, and he's going to just demolish the last two. He misses. Oh, that's hilarious. I forget. I think that this Durant has Bright Powder, because that's the only Quick Attack can miss. And it worked. And so he got the Entrainment, and so he has to switch out here. So that was hilarious how that worked out. That was actually pretty cool. So he does do that, but it doesn't work out all that well for him, because the Scald still just destroys the poor Doug trio. Can't really do anything to the Quagsire at this point. It just goes down. So at this point, he goes back into the Durant and tries, I guess, to do some damage. He does have Rest, which I think is interesting. The Scald still does plenty to the Durant because of its low special defense. So it still goes down. But it's an interesting set. I like the idea of having like Rest and stuff. But anyways, some interesting things from the Black Ice. Pretty solid plays by the Charmillionaires. Always bring Fake Out on Mega Kangaskhan. That's all I really have to say. So, yeah, I guess we'll look at the last match. Now, this is the last match because I believe Feliday forfeited against... No, Feliday and the Alakazams did not have their match due to complications. So this is the last match we'll watch, and it was between the Kentucky Krookodiles and the Minnesota Mucks. And so, I think up until this week, this is an example of somebody trying something new, and I really appreciate that about the Mucks. Is I think they're bringing the same thing each week, and they broke that this week by bringing this team. It was not what I expected at all, and so I was a bit concerned, but I still felt pretty comfortable bringing what I brought. You know, my 2 offensive fast threats and Weavile and Talonflame, my Wall Core plus Sylveon, and Krookodile. I think he was a Choice Scarf set, if I remember correctly. But anyways, we'll go ahead and get started. So I knew that he would either start off with Ninetales or maybe Nidoking. So I started off with Krookodile knowing I had somewhat of an advantage, especially with the Scarf. I did have Stealth Rocks on it because I wanted him to think that I wouldn't be Choice Scarf on that first turn. So I know he switches out here. I get free Rocks up. Actually, never mind. I thought that I might have done that, but I went for Earthquake thinking he might stay in and go for a Solar Beam, but he doesn't. He goes for a knockoff, getting off the Choice Band on my Talonflame. I go for Brave Bird just to take out the Tangrowth right then and there. And then he rings in Slowking, so I just go for a U-turn and go into Chansey. Now he uses Shadow Ball. I'm not sure if he brought Shadow Ball instead of a Psychic attack because of my Chansey immunity, but I have more Dark types. Or let me rethink that. He brought Shadow Ball, and I have brought Chansey to every match. So I'm not sure if he brought that because he thought that would do the most neutral damage to most of my team, or what. And Psychic moves wouldn't do very much considering I have 3 Dark types that I usually bring. So maybe that's why he brought it, but it wasn't Stab, and obviously Chansey is immune to it, so it did nothing there. Obviously I'm going to just try and see what he does, but passing off a Wish, he disables. That's fine. I'm just going to go for, I think, a Seismic Toss. No, I go for Toxic here. But he goes into Nidoking. I'm like, okay, fair play. I switched in to potentially sack off the Talonflame, and I'm able to avoid taking damage because he goes for Earthquake, which usually Nidoking's a much stronger Sheer Force Life Orb special attacker instead of a physical attacker. But he goes for Earthquake. I go for a U-turn here, back into the Chansey, and he uses Aqua Tail, so I know that with Black Sludge and all that stuff, that he's not going to do that much to Chansey. He does get a crit here, but I just go for Wish, knowing that I can live another hit, and I go for a Seismic Toss, I think. Yeah. And then I get healed up, and so I just know that he can't break my Chansey, so I think I go for another Wish here, and he's just healing up again, but he switches out. I go for a Seismic Toss. I get healed back up. He switched out to Slowking, I guess, to disable again, stopping my Wish, but I got a free switch into my Krookodile. He switched into his Goodra, and I was like, well, I'll go for Stealth Rocks. I might live most of what he had. He goes for Bulldoze, which slows me down, but I still outspeed with the Scarf. But since I was choiced into Stealth Rock, I had to switch out. But I did get my Rocks up, so I go back out to Chansey because I know it can handle anything Goodra throws at me. I'm not sure why he's carrying Bulldoze because usually it's a better special attacker. Ice Beam is a good choice. Draco or Dragon Pulse would be good. But he goes back out into Ninetales, sets up the Sun. I just switch back out into my Sylveon. I know that it can take a hit, and I knew that if he stayed in, I would be able to Baton Pass and get a switch in to put some momentum on this thing. So I switch back into my Krookodile. I know that I'll outspeed, and at this point, Earthquake does plenty of damage to each of them. And since he's Moxie, I knew that now I can potentially sweep. I did not stay in here, I don't think, because I was afraid of the Scald. But he goes for Trick, which is interesting. And this was actually really cool. He had lagging tail that he's going to trick onto one of my fast mons to slow it really far down. I think how lagging tail works is it actually makes my mon move last. So really interesting idea. I've never thought of doing trick lagging tail, but it really could have worked on my Krookodile or something else. Either way, he did trick my my Sylveon into that, but I just go for, I think, a Calm Mind here. Yeah, because he can't do anything to my to my Athena Sylveon. And so at this point, I know that I can just two-shot it with Hyper Voice. But with the leftovers, it's going to make it 3 hits total. He does get the Disable, but I went for Baton Pass, knowing that I couldn't take it out one more hit. So I switched out. The Baton Pass Calm Mind wasn't a planned thing. I was like, oh, that's kind of nice. So I knew that, like, if he switched out, Pursuit would kill. He didn't, and he went for Trick Room instead, which was interesting. But now he switches out, and the Pursuit takes it out. So now I know that I outspeed anything, but with Trick Room it's a bit more tricky. No pun intended. And Goodra with Draco Meteor is not fun, which I still wasn't sure if he had or not. So I switched out. With the +1, I guess I should have considered that it wouldn't have taken me out. And with the +1, I would have two-shot this Goodra, or one-shot it maybe even. But I switch out back to Chansey because that was the safe play. I get the poison on the Goodra, and I just kind of wall it, as you can tell. He goes out into the Absol, and I switch out because I was wearing them down, and I knew that he would switch probably. So he switches out into Absol, I switch into Weavile, and I'm packing X-Scissor on this thing specifically for the Absol. And I know I outspeed it before and after its Mega Evolution, so I go for X-Scissor and one-shot it, and got rid of that threat. So I felt pretty good about being able to bring that and pull it off too. So I knew that that at this point Weavile could take out those 2 threats, and then the Ninetales. I was nervous about the knockout not taking it out, so I switched into the Chansey again for safe plays, and the Chansey kind of just wears it down here because it can't take me out, so I just Toxic Stall it. And so I ended up winning, kind of similar to why the main reason that the Raikos won their match was there's essentially nothing to really break the Chansey. That's what really kind of stopped all the momentum that the Mucks had against the Krookodiles. So I think that's honestly what allowed them to pull through the way they did. So really interesting plays. Like I said, Life Orb, Sheer Force, special attacking Nidoking is really strong, and Goodra is also a really good specially defensive, bulky Pokemon, as well as a good specially offensive Pokemon. So that was some really cool stuff, but overall I think there were some really cool plays. There were some really interesting ones that ended up working out. Like I said, there's some certain staple things that coaches out there should make sure they're aware of. Try to prepare a little bit better and not bring this the same type of stuff each week, because against teams who spend a bit more time preparing and have realized that you're going to have a lot harder time of beating them if you don't try to change things up. So if you bring the same thing each week, even if it's strong, you're eventually going to lose because it'll be too predictable. So again, I hope that I haven't been overcritical or anything, but I really just want to see everybody improve. I hope at some point in the future that, really my goal is to make myself the worst player. I want everybody to be at a point where they can rival one another, and I'm really excited about where the season is gone. So I look forward to talking about and going through Week 5 recap. So until then, I will see you all later.